The night was sticky, the kind of heat that made everything feel heavier, like it carried a secret. I stood at the edge of my driveway, the shotgun cold and steady in my hands, staring up at the dim glow of my bedroom window. It was past midnight, and while the rest of the world slept, my world was busy unraveling in the cruelest way possible. For weeks, there had been whispers in my head, doubts born from the smallest cracks. Jessica, my wife of 10 years, had changed. Her laughter, once warm and full, now sounded rehearsed. Her eyes darted away too quickly when I asked about her day. The once consistent rhythm of our lives had been replaced with excuses, late-night meetings, and a phone that never left her side. But tonight wasn't about whispers. Tonight, the doubts turned into something more, a storm. A few hours earlier, I'd gotten a tip from a friend. Jared, the guy who worked over at Murphy's gas station, had seen Jessica drive out to the Cedarwood Motel. Not for the first time, either. I drove there like a man possessed, each mile closer boiling my blood. And then, I saw it, her car parked neatly in the lot. Room 17. I didn't hesitate. Kicking the door open, I fired once, hitting my cheating wife's lover in the buttocks. As he screamed and leaped away from her, I broke the shotgun open, reloaded, and shot her too. The room erupted in chaos. Her lover, a wiry, shirtless man, screeched in pain, clutching his backside. Jessica sat frozen on the edge of the bed, sheets tangled around her like a guilty cocoon. "You're insane," she screamed, her face twisted in both anger and shock. "What the hell is wrong with you, Daniel? What's wrong with me?" My voice was cold, measured, a tone I didn't recognize. "What's wrong with me is I gave you everything, Jessica. And this is how you pay me back." Her lover regained some composure and made a move toward me, clearly intending to beat me senseless. His fury only quickened his downfall. I cocked the shotgun, and his steps faltered, his bravery disappearing as quickly as it arrived. He trembled and collapsed to the floor. Jessica, ever the manipulator, tried to pivot. "You're overreacting," she spat. "This doesn't mean anything. It was just a mistake." I barked a laugh, the sound hollow in the tiny room. "A mistake? Meeting at motels is a mistake? Lying for months is a mistake?" Her eyes, those deceitful eyes, narrowed. "And what about you, Daniel? Always working, always busy with your stupid projects. When's the last time you even looked at me like a woman?" The word stung, but I wasn't about to let her twist the knife. "Don't you dare put this on me," I snarled. "You chose this. You decided we weren't enough for you." Her lover groaned from the floor, a pathetic heap of bad decisions. I stepped over him, looming over Jessica. She flinched, and for a moment, I thought she might actually feel something, remorse, fear, regret. But no. Instead, she sneered. "You think this makes you a man? Running in here with a shotgun like some lunatic? You're pathetic, Daniel. Always have been." I felt the rage rise again, the kind of fury that demands destruction. But instead of firing, I turned the weapon around and smashed the butt of the gun into the cheap motel dresser. The mirror shattered, shards raining down like glass tears. "This isn't over," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Not even close." Jessica stayed silent, but her defiance was etched into every line of her face. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was just, Jessica, a woman who had traded loyalty for lies without a second thought. As I walked out of that room, the cool night air hit me like a slap. I didn't feel better. If anything, I felt worse, the weight of betrayal settling into my chest like a stone. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The night air felt sharp, slicing through my skin as I stepped out of that godforsaken motel room. My hands were trembling around the shotgun, knuckles white from the death grip I had on it. Behind me, Jessica's shrill voice still echoed faintly through the cracked door, calling out some half-baked insult as her lover whimpered in the background. I should have walked away. I should have driven home, poured myself a whiskey, and let the silence of the night swallow me whole. But something inside me, a dark, gnawing instinct, kept pulling me back. I turned around. The motel parking lot was empty except for a single flickering streetlight and the distant hum of cicadas. I stared at Jessica's car, her stupid little red Mazda, the same car she'd promised was just for work errands. I kicked the bumper so hard my foot throbbed, but it wasn't enough. Nothing felt like enough. I stormed back into the room. Jessica was standing now, a cheap white sheet wrapped around her body like some mockery of purity. Her lover, a skinny guy with patchy facial hair, was still on the floor, groaning and clutching his rear end where the buckshot had peppered him. What now, Daniel? You want to play the big bad husband some more? Jessica snapped, her voice dripping with venom. Shut up. My voice came out low, like gravel grinding under tires. You don't get to talk. Not after this. She laughed, an actual laugh. Like this was some twisted sitcom and I was the clueless punchline. Oh please. You're acting like some tragic hero in one of those dime store novels you read in your garage. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I glanced at her lover, who was slowly trying to crawl toward his discarded jeans. His phone buzzed in the pocket, and for some reason, that sound, just the faint vibration of it, made my stomach turn. I lunged, grabbing the phone before he could reach it. I didn't know what I was expecting to see when I unlocked it, maybe messages, some cheap flirting, or sickening selfies of the two of them. But what I found was worse. The messages went back months. Hundreds of them. Photos, hotel reservations, inside jokes. He'd even sent her a picture of me, fixing our damn sink, followed by a laughing emoji. I looked up, and Jessica's face shifted. For the first time, I saw something crack through that smug mask, fear. Give me the phone, Daniel, she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. No. She lunged at me, trying to snatch it away, but I shoved her back with my forearm. She stumbled, hitting the edge of the bed with a sharp gasp. Is this funny to you, Jessica? I held the phone up, shaking it in her direction. You've been laughing at me for months. Making me into some joke while you, I pointed at the guy on the floor, while you do this behind my back. Her lover, his name was apparently Travis, according to the messages, tried to speak. Man, listen, I didn't. Shut your damn mouth, I growled, pointing the shotgun in his direction again. He went silent instantly, his face pale and sweaty. Jessica sat back up, brushing her tangled hair out of her face. And then, with all the arrogance of someone who's never faced consequences, she smirked. You think you're so righteous, Daniel? Like you're some innocent little saint in all this? Newsflash, you're boring. You're predictable. You spend more time tinkering with tools in your stupid garage than you ever did with me. The words hit hard, but not as hard as her expression. She meant them. Every single one. You're unbelievable, I muttered, my chest tight with something between rage and heartbreak. For a split second, I considered pulling the trigger again, ending this circus right here, right now. But I couldn't. Whatever shred of humanity I had left kept my finger from squeezing down on the trigger. Instead, I turned back to Travis. Get up. He hesitated, looking at Jessica like she'd somehow save him. I said get up. I barked, and he scrambled to his feet, pants still halfway around his ankles. Get out of here, I said. Take your phone, your dignity, what little of it you have, and leave. Because if I see your face again, I swear to God, Travis, they won't find all of you. He didn't need to be told twice. Limping, clutching his backside, he bolted out the door, leaving his shoes and half his clothes behind. Jessica stayed frozen, sitting on the edge of the bed, clutching the sheet around her like some wounded animal. I looked at her one last time. Really looked at her. This was the woman I'd shared 10 years of my life with. The woman I'd loved, protected, and built a future with. And yet, in this moment, she felt like a stranger. "You know what, Jessica?" I said, my voice low and exhausted. "You're not even worth the hate I feel right now." I turned and walked out of that motel room, shotgun still in hand. But as I reached my truck, a thought hit me, something dark and unsettling. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And deep down, I knew Jessica wasn't done either. The real storm was still coming. The drive home felt endless, even though it was only 20 minutes. My knuckles were still white against the steering wheel, the shotgun laid across the passenger seat like a silent accomplice. The night outside was suffocating, the stars too dim, the moon half hidden behind a veil of clouds. Every mile felt heavier, every breath harder to take. When I pulled into our driveway, the house loomed ahead, our house. A home built on a decade of memories, laughter, and promises. Now it felt like a mausoleum, filled with ghosts of a marriage that had died long before tonight. I walked inside, the shotgun still in hand. The scent of lavender air freshener clung to the air, a scent Jessica always loved. I wanted to rip the damn air freshener off the wall and set it on fire. The living room was spotless, not a single thing out of place. Photos of us lined the walls, vacations, anniversaries, that one camping trip where we got rained out and ended up laughing about soggy marshmallows. Lies. Every one of those framed smiles felt like a slap in the face. I sat down on the couch, the shotgun resting across my lap. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every red flag I'd ignored. The late nights. The sudden secrecy with her phone. The faint smell of men's cologne when she'd come home late, claiming she'd been with the girls. How could I have been so blind? The front door creaked open behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Her footsteps were familiar, soft, hesitant, like she was walking on glass. "Daniel," Jessica's voice was quiet, but it carried that same sharp edge I'd grown to recognize. The edge of someone who's not sorry, just caught. I didn't respond. She took a few steps closer, the faint rustle of her jacket breaking the silence. "Are you going to just sit there all night like some psychopath with a shotgun in your lap?" I turned my head slightly, just enough to see her standing there in the dim light. She was still wearing the same outfit she'd been wearing at the motel, a black blouse and a pencil skirt, now wrinkled and stained with the chaos of our earlier confrontation. Her makeup was smudged, but her expression? Cold. Calculating. "You came home," I said flatly. "Of course I came home. Where else would I go? Back to the motel. Back to Travis." Her face twitched slightly at the mention of his name, but she quickly masked it with an eye roll. "Oh, for God's sake, Daniel. Are we really going to do this? Again?" I slowly set the shotgun down on the coffee table, my eyes locked on hers. "Do what, Jessica? Discuss how you've been sleeping with another man behind my back for God knows how long? Or do you want to lecture me again about how boring I am?" She sighed dramatically, crossing her arms. "You're so predictable, Daniel. So emotional. I swear, you're acting like I murdered someone." The audacity of this woman. The sheer, unapologetic venom in her voice made something snap inside me. I stood up so fast the coffee table rattled, but Jessica didn't flinch. She stared me down like I was the problem. "You did murder something, Jess," I said through gritted teeth. "You murdered our marriage. You took every moment we shared, every promise, and set it on fire for what? A few cheap motel rooms and a guy who probably can't even spell commitment?" She smirked again, that same insufferable smirk from the motel room. Oh, don't act like we were perfect, Daniel. You think this happened overnight? You think I woke up one day and said, gee, I think I'll destroy my marriage today? No. You pushed me here. With your endless projects, your silent brooding, your constant absence even when you were right next to me. I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. Are you seriously blaming me for your affair? Yes, she snapped, her voice rising. Because it takes two people to ruin a marriage, Daniel. You're not innocent here. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had been caught red-handed, caught in the most humiliating, undeniable way, and yet, she was standing in our living room, twisting the knife deeper, making me the villain in her story. And then it hit me. She wasn't sorry. Not even a little bit. Jessica wasn't a woman caught in a mistake. She was a woman who believed she was right. A bitter laugh escaped me as I sat back down on the couch, running a hand through my hair. You know what, Jess? You're incredible. I mean it. Truly. I don't think I've ever met someone so relentlessly, unapologetically cruel in my entire life. She scoffed and turned away, walking toward the kitchen. Oh please, Daniel. Get off your high horse. You're not some tragic hero, and I'm not the evil queen in your little sob story. But before she could leave the room, I spoke again. Don't you dare walk away from me, Jessica. Not this time. She froze, her back still to me. Sit down, I said, my voice low and firm. Slowly, she turned back around and sat down on the armrest of the recliner across from me. Her arms were still crossed, her chin tilted upward in defiance. We're going to have a conversation, I said quietly. One you can't lie your way out of. One where you actually answer my questions. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And as much as Jessica thought she had control of this narrative, she was dead wrong. The storm had only just begun. Jessica perched on the armrest like a vulture, arms crossed, eyes sharp, mouth curled into that same infuriating smirk she always wore when she thought she was in control. The silence between us crackled, heavy and electric, like the air before a lightning strike. I leaned back on the couch, the shotgun still resting on the table between us, its presence a silent referee in this ugly game we were playing. All right, Jessica, I said, my voice calm but firm. No more games. No more excuses. You're going to tell me everything. Start from the beginning. When did it start? She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Oh, Daniel, spare me the dramatic interrogation act. Does it even matter? You already know the answer. I slammed my fist on the coffee table, rattling the shotgun and sending an empty glass flying to the floor. Crash. Jessica flinched, her mask slipping for just a second. It matters to me. I growled. Because while I was working overtime, fixing things around this house, and planning a life for us, you were out there, God knows where, with him. Jessica's lips twitched into something that was almost a smile, but not quite. Fine. You want the truth, Daniel? It started 8 months ago. He was fun. He made me feel alive. And you, well, you were just there. Always busy, always distracted, always acting like you were the only one carrying the weight of this marriage. 8 months. 8 damn months. While I was breaking my back at work, she was busy playing house with some scrawny idiot named Travis in grimy motel rooms. My stomach turned, but I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. And what about the nights you came home late? The girls' nights that you never let me ask about? Was that him too? She shrugged casually, like we were talking about what to have for dinner. Sometimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes it was just me, sitting in my car, wondering if I even wanted to come home to this. Those words, if I even wanted to come home to this, landed like a sledgehammer to my chest. I had been fighting for this marriage, pouring my soul into it, while she sat in her car deciding if I was even worth the drive back. Jessica tilted her head slightly, her smirk returning. You know, you're acting like you're some saint, Daniel. But we both know you're not perfect. How many times did I beg you to take me out somewhere nice? How many times did I sit across from you at dinner while you stared at your phone or some stupid YouTube video about woodworking? I clenched my fists so tightly my nails bit into my palms. She was trying to twist the knife again, to make me the villain in this mess, but I wouldn't let her. You could have talked to me, Jessica. You could have told me you were unhappy. We could have fixed this. She barked out a laugh, sharp and humorless. Fixed it? Oh, Daniel. Some things aren't worth fixing. And honestly, I stopped caring about us a long time ago. There it was. The raw, unfiltered truth. She didn't care. Not about me, not about us, not about the promises we made. For a moment, the room fell silent again. Jessica sat there, chin tilted up like she was daring me to do something. To react. To break. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for my phone. What are you doing? She asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Calling your parents, I said calmly. They deserve to know what their precious daughter has been up to. Jessica shot up from the armrest, eyes blazing with anger. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would, I said, dialing the number. Because if I'm going to have to untangle this mess, I'm not doing it in the dark. Everyone's going to know exactly who you are, Jessica. She lunged at me, grabbing for the phone. I stood up and shoved her back with one hand, holding the phone high out of her reach. You're a coward, she screamed, her voice breaking as she pointed a trembling finger at me. You can't handle this like a real man, so you're going to drag my family into it? You disgust me. I laughed bitterly. Disgust you? Jessica, you don't even realize how pathetic you sound right now. You had everything. A home, a husband who loved you, stability, and you threw it all away for some motel parking lot fantasy with a guy who probably can't even pay his own rent. She froze, her chest heaving, tears welling up in her eyes, but not the kind of tears you'd expect from guilt or regret. No, these were tears of frustration. She was angry that her game was falling apart. I lowered the phone and stared at her, hard. This marriage is over, Jessica. You understand that, right? There's no coming back from this. Her shoulders slumped slightly, her face finally softening. For a moment, I thought I saw regret, real regret, cross her expression. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that cold steel facade she wore so well. Fine, she said flatly. But if you think you're walking away from this without a fight, you're dead wrong. You'll regret ever crossing me, Daniel. Her words hung in the air like smoke, choking the last remnants of warmth out of the room. Jessica turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the hallway. A door slammed somewhere in the distance, and I was left alone in the flickering light of the living room. The shotgun still sat on the coffee table. My phone buzzed with notifications. But all I could hear was her voice echoing in my head. You'll regret ever crossing me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And whatever storm Jessica was planning, I'd be ready for it. The house felt suffocating after Jessica stormed off. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was sharp, a blade pressed against my throat, waiting to slice. I sat back down on the couch, the shotgun still staring at me from the coffee table. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. You don't know what you've started, Danny boy. Watch your back. My stomach tightened. Travis. It had to be him. I clenched the phone so hard I thought it might crack. The audacity of this guy, to threaten me in my own home after I caught him tangled up with my wife? I stared at the message for a long moment before typing out a response. Big words for a guy who cried when I put buckshot in his ass. You want to settle this? Anytime. Anywhere. I hit send and tossed the phone onto the couch. My pulse was racing, my hands trembling with a mix of fury and exhaustion. I had no idea what game Travis and Jessica were playing now, but I knew one thing: I wasn't about to let them walk all over me. The sound of glass shattering made me jump to my feet. It came from the kitchen. I grabbed the shotgun, broke it open, and checked the shells. Loaded. Good. Slowly, I crept toward the kitchen, the hardwood floor creaking under my weight. The lights were still on, casting sharp shadows across the tiled floor. A window above the sink was smashed, glass glittering on the counter and floor like a pile of jagged diamonds. A brick lay in the middle of the mess. Attached to it was a note, hastily scrawled in black marker. You should have stayed quiet. My blood turned to ice. I scanned the backyard through the broken window, but whoever had thrown the brick was already gone. Cowards, I muttered under my breath. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. That was just a warning. You don't want to see what happens next. I leaned against the counter, breathing heavily, trying to steady myself. I needed to think. I needed to act. But before I could formulate a plan, Jessica's voice cut through the silence from somewhere upstairs. Daniel, she screamed. Her voice was high-pitched, panicked. I froze for a second. Was this another trick? Another one of her games? Daniel, please, she yelled again. I slung the shotgun over my shoulder and bolted up the stairs 2 steps at a time. Her voice was coming from the bedroom, the same bedroom where we had once shared dreams, secrets, and quiet laughter. I kicked the door open, the shotgun ready. Jessica was standing near the window, clutching her phone in one hand. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with genuine fear. The window was open, curtains blowing gently in the breeze. What the hell happened? I demanded, scanning the room. He was here, she stammered, backing away from the window. Who was here? Travis? She nodded frantically. I don't know how he got in. I was on the phone with my mom when I heard someone in the hallway. I thought it was you, but when I turned around, he was standing right there, Daniel. Right there. I felt every hair on my neck stand up. And then? I pressed, tightening my grip on the shotgun. He said I needed to keep my mouth shut. That if I didn't, he'd make sure neither of us walked away from this. Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time in a long while, Jessica looked vulnerable. I scanned the room, my eyes darting to the open window. Could he have climbed out? Was he still nearby? This ends tonight, I said, my voice low and firm. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Daniel. I'm scared. For a brief second, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered every lie, every sneer, every insult she had thrown at me earlier. Spare me the theatrics, Jess, I said coldly. You made this mess. Now we're both in it. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, leaving her standing there by the window. Downstairs, I locked all the doors and turned off the lights. If Travis wanted to come back, he'd be walking into a trap. But as I sat in the darkened living room, the shotgun balanced across my knees, a sinking feeling settled deep in my gut. Something wasn't adding up. Why would Travis threaten her? He had no reason to. Unless this wasn't about Jessica at all. The thought crept into my mind like a spider weaving a web. What if Jessica wasn't telling me everything? What if there was something bigger at play here? I glanced up the stairs, where faint light spilled out from the bedroom door. Jessica was hiding something. I could feel it. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. Tick-tock, Danny boy. Time's almost up. A chill ran down my spine as I stared at the words. Whatever game Jessica and Travis were playing, it was escalating fast. And I was right in the middle of it. The clock was ticking, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out alive. The house felt like a tomb. Shadows stretched across the walls, distorted shapes from the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. The shotgun rested in my lap, cold and heavy, its presence both reassuring and ominous. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look this time. I already knew it was him, Travis. The coward was enjoying this. Jessica hadn't come downstairs. Part of me was grateful, her presence was like sandpaper on an open wound. But another part of me felt uneasy. She wasn't the type to stay quiet for long. I took a deep breath and let the silence wrap around me like a suffocating blanket. That's when I heard it, a faint creak from upstairs. My head snapped toward the staircase. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the house settling. Someone, or something, was up there. I rose from the couch slowly, shotgun in hand, my finger resting lightly on the trigger. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears that it felt like it was echoing in the room. Step by step, I ascended the stairs. The wood groaned beneath my weight, but I didn't care. Whoever was up there already knew I was coming. When I reached the landing, I paused. The hallway stretched out in both directions, ending with the master bedroom door, Jessica's faint light still spilling out from the crack beneath it. But halfway down the hall, one of the guest room doors was slightly ajar. I moved toward it, the shotgun raised. The door creaked as I nudged it open with the barrel. Empty. The window was closed, curtains drawn. Nothing seemed out of place. But then I noticed it, a faint smell of cologne. Cheap, overpowering, and unmistakably Travis. I backed out of the room carefully, keeping my eyes on every corner, every shadow. When I turned to head toward the master bedroom, Jessica was standing in the hallway, her face ghostly pale. "Daniel," she whispered. "What is it?" I asked, my voice low and steady. Her lip trembled as she pointed behind me. I spun around, shotgun raised, but the hallway was empty. "There was someone," she choked out, her voice breaking. "Where?" I barked. But before she could answer, there was a loud crash downstairs. The unmistakable sound of glass breaking, followed by heavy footsteps. I bolted down the stairs, Jessica trailing behind me, her hands clutching her phone. The living room window was shattered, glass scattered across the floor like ice shards. The curtains billowed in the cool night breeze. But there was no one there. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "Nice place you've got here. Shame if something happened to it." I looked at Jessica, her eyes wide with fear. "This ends now. I'm calling the police." "No," she shouted, grabbing my arm. I froze. "What do you mean no?" She looked desperate, her voice trembling. "If you call the police, they'll make everything worse. Travis he's not just some random guy, Daniel. He's dangerous. He has people." "People?" I repeated. "What the hell are you talking about, Jessica? What did you get us into?" She opened her mouth, but then her phone started ringing. The screen lit up, Travis. Her face drained of color. "Answer it," I said through gritted teeth. She hesitated, but then pressed the green button and put it on speaker. "Jessica," Travis's voice oozed through the speaker, calm and casual, like he wasn't terrorizing us in our own home. "I told you not to get him involved. And yet, here we are. How predictable. What do you want, Travis?" I snapped. There was a pause on the other end before Travis let out a low chuckle. "Oh, Danny boy. You still think this is about you, don't you? You poor, clueless idiot. Cut the crap." I shouted. "Why are you here? Why are you doing this?" Another silence, and then his voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "Ask your wife, Daniel. Ask her about the money." My eyes locked onto Jessica. Her face was frozen, her mouth slightly open, like a kid caught stealing candy. "What money?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. Travis's laugh was sharp and grating. "Oh, she didn't tell you? Typical Jess. Always leaving out the important details. How about I make it simple? If I don't get what's mine by tomorrow night, neither of you will make it to sunrise." The line went dead. I stared at Jessica, my hands trembling around the shotgun. "What money, Jess?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her slightly. "Tell me, damn it. What did you do?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "I borrowed money from him, a lot of money. I thought I could pay it back before you found out, but..." "But what, Jessica?" I growled. "But I can't, Daniel," she wailed. "I can't pay it back. And now he's here, and he's not going to stop until he gets it, or until we're dead." I let her go, stumbling back a step as the weight of her confession hit me like a freight train. Everything clicked into place, the threats, the brick, the smashed window. This wasn't about some affair anymore. This was about debt. And it wasn't just Jessica in danger. It was both of us. The faint sound of tires crunching gravel reached my ears from outside. Headlights cut through the living room curtains, casting eerie shadows on the wall. "They're here," I whispered. Jessica froze, her hands clamped over her mouth. I cocked the shotgun and glanced at her, my voice low and firm. "Get upstairs. Lock yourself in the bedroom. Don't come out until I say." She hesitated, but the sound of car doors slamming shut jolted her into action. She bolted up the stairs, and I moved to the front door, shotgun at the ready. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was war. The headlights outside cut through the darkness like twin blades, casting long, sharp shadows across the living room. I crouched behind the couch, shotgun braced against my shoulder, and waited. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat feeling like a ticking clock counting down to the inevitable. From my position, I could see the faint outlines of two figures stepping out of a black SUV. Their silhouettes moved confidently, unbothered by the chaos they had already caused. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other shorter but stockier. Both had the unmistakable swagger of men who had done this sort of thing before. The taller one approached the porch while the shorter figure lingered by the SUV, his head on a swivel as if keeping watch. They weren't here to talk. The taller guy pounded on the door. "Daniel." His voice was deep, steady, and too calm for a man who'd just thrown a brick through my window. "We know you're in there. Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be." I didn't answer. I tightened my grip on the shotgun, my finger resting just outside the trigger guard. "Come on, Danny boy," he continued, his voice taking on a mocking edge. "You don't want us to huff and puff and blow your little house down, do ya?" His partner let out a raspy laugh from the driveway. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. These guys weren't amateurs, they were predators. From upstairs, I could hear the faint shuffle of Jessica moving around. I hoped to God she was locked in the bedroom like I told her. The tall guy banged on the door again, harder this time. "All right, have it your way," he said with a sigh. Then I heard the distinct sound of a pistol being cocked. "They're coming in." The lock rattled violently, and then the unmistakable sound of wood splintering filled the air. The door cracked open, swinging slightly on its broken hinges. The taller guy stepped into the doorway, his silhouette outlined by the SUV's headlights. I rose from my hiding spot behind the couch, shotgun aimed directly at his chest. "Back up!" I barked. He froze, both hands raised, though the pistol in his right hand was still visible. "Whoa, easy there, cowboy," he said smoothly. "Let's not do anything we'll regret. Drop the gun. Now." His lips curled into a smirk. "You're not gonna shoot me, Danny. You're a decent guy. Family man, right? You've got a house, a mortgage, a cheating wife." Bang! I fired. The shotgun roared, and the blast tore into the doorframe just inches from his head. Splinters rained down on him as he stumbled back onto the porch, cursing loudly. His partner in the driveway pulled his own weapon and fired a shot through the window. The glass shattered, sending shards flying across the room. I dove behind the couch, heart slamming against my ribcage. My ears were ringing from the shotgun blast, but I could still hear their muffled shouts outside. "You crazy son of a bitch," the shorter man yelled. There was a brief silence, then more footsteps, the unmistakable sound of boots crunching on gravel. They were regrouping. I stayed low, reloading the shotgun as fast as my shaking hands would allow. 2 shells. 2 chances. Suddenly, I heard movement upstairs. Jessica screamed. My blood ran cold. "Jessica!" I shouted. The men must have realized where she was, too, because the shorter one called out, "Looks like we've got ourselves a little bonus upstairs." Without thinking, I bolted up the stairs 2 at a time, my boots slamming against the wood. I could hear Jessica screaming behind the locked bedroom door, and then, a gunshot. The bedroom door splintered from the impact. Someone was kicking it in. I reached the landing just as the shorter man shoved the door open and stepped inside. His back was to me, his pistol raised. Without hesitation, I fired. The shotgun roared again, and the man's body jerked violently before crumpling to the floor in a heap. Jessica screamed louder, curling up in the corner of the room, her hands over her head. The taller guy downstairs must have heard the shot because I could hear him bellowing, "You're dead, Daniel." I grabbed the dead man's pistol from his lifeless hand and tossed it to Jessica. "Take it. Point and shoot if you have to." She nodded, her face streaked with tears, clutching the weapon with trembling hands. I stepped back out into the hallway, shotgun aimed down the staircase. The taller guy was halfway up, his own gun raised, eyes blazing with fury. "You think this is over, Daniel?" he roared. "You step 1 inch closer, and I'll blow you apart." I shouted back. But before either of us could move, headlights flashed through the front window. Red and blue lights. Police sirens screamed in the distance, growing louder with every passing second. The taller guy froze. His head turned slightly toward the flashing lights, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "You called the cops," he muttered. I didn't respond. I just kept the shotgun trained on him. He lowered his weapon slowly, step by step, and backed down the stairs. The sound of multiple car doors slamming and officers shouting orders filled the air. "Hands up!" The taller man hesitated, his head snapping between me and the front door. But finally, he dropped the pistol and raised his hands. I collapsed against the wall, the shotgun slipping from my fingers as uniformed officers flooded into the house. Jessica stepped into the hallway, her face pale and tear-streaked, the pistol still clutched in her hands. It was over. At least, the shooting was over. But something told me the fallout from tonight was only just beginning. The house was a crime scene, yellow tape stretched across the porch, shattered glass littered the floor, and the scent of gunpowder still clung to the air. Blue and red lights painted the walls in flickering patterns while uniformed officers moved in and out like worker ants. Jessica sat in the corner of the living room, wrapped in a scratchy police blanket, her mascara smeared down her cheeks. I stood by the kitchen counter, a stale cup of coffee cooling in my hands. An officer had tried to ask me questions, but I couldn't focus. The noise, the lights, the weight of the shotgun's recoil still vibrating in my bones, it was all too much. Detective Harris approached me, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel in a tin can. He cleared his throat, pulling out a worn notebook. "Daniel, you did what you had to do," he said flatly. "From what we've gathered so far, these men were known enforcers. They weren't here to negotiate. If you hadn't acted, well, let's just say the ending could have been very different." I nodded but said nothing. There was no victory in his words. No relief. Just the hollow echo of survival. "Your wife told us about the debt," Harris continued. "Travis was running a side racket, loaning out money at insane interest rates. Your wife got tangled up in that mess. She's lucky to be alive." I glanced at Jessica across the room. She was staring blankly at the floor, clutching that damn police blanket like it was her last lifeline. "She didn't tell me, Detective," I said softly. "Not about the money. Not about him. Not about anything." Harris sighed and closed his notebook. "Some people bury their secrets so deep they think they'll never surface. But they always do, Daniel. They always do." He gave me a pat on the shoulder and walked off, leaving me alone with the unbearable silence pressing against my chest. Hours later, after the cops had packed up, the bodies were gone, and the sun was beginning to peek over the horizon, Jessica and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The house was still a mess, glass crunched underfoot, and the air was thick with unspoken words. Her eyes met mine, red, swollen, filled with something between guilt and fear. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered. I let out a bitter laugh and shook my head. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Jess. You didn't just cheat on me. You didn't just lie to me. You put both of our lives on the line because you thought you could outsmart a guy like Travis." She flinched at his name, her hands trembling around the now cold mug of coffee she was holding. "I thought I could fix it," she said, her voice cracking. "I thought I could make it all disappear before you ever found out. But everything just kept getting worse. The money, the threats, him." My stomach churned at the mention of him. Travis, the man who had turned my home into a war zone. The man she had welcomed into our bed. "Why, Jess?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why him? Why this?" Her lip quivered, and she looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I was lonely, Daniel. You were always working, always distant. And he made me feel like I mattered. At least at first. But it stopped being about that a long time ago. After the money, after the threats, it stopped being about anything except survival. I wanted to yell, to scream, to tell her how much she had destroyed. But I couldn't. I was empty. Hollowed out by exhaustion, anger, and the unbearable weight of everything we had been through. "I can't do this anymore, Jessica," I said finally, my voice steady but cold. Her head snapped up, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, please, Daniel. We can fix this. We can rebuild. I'll do anything. Please." But I shook my head. "Some things can't be fixed, Jess. Some things are too broken to ever be whole again." I pushed back my chair and stood up, walking toward the shattered window where the first bullet had torn through our lives. "I'll be staying with my brother for a while," I said without turning around. "The lawyers can sort the rest out." She let out a soft sob behind me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Outside, the sun was rising, a warm orange glow spreading across the sky. Birds chirped somewhere in the distance, oblivious to the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. I climbed into my truck, gripping the steering wheel tightly as I stared at the house, my house, now a hollow shell of everything it used to represent. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. A text from my brother. "Come over whenever. Doors open." I started the engine, but before pulling away, I allowed myself one final glance at the broken home I was leaving behind. There was no redemption in this story. No clean resolution. Just the harsh, undeniable reality of betrayal, consequence, and survival. As I drove away, the weight of the night pressed down on me, but a faint flicker of something, freedom, perhaps, stirred deep in my chest. I wasn't healed. I wasn't okay. But I was alive. And that would have to be enough.